Welcome to the Rio Confidential podcast. I'm Christopher Elliott here with my boy Aaron.
Yeah, here's your boy.
My boy Aaron.
It's your boy.
Hey, welcome. We are here from Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah. Well,
We've been here for 2 weeks, and I know it's been a while since we've done a podcast, so we figured we should tell you what we're up to.
we're in Rio and we've been enjoying the great beaches here, haven't we?
Yeah, you could say that, right? Yeah.
Kinda.
Rio's an interesting place. I mean, Brazil is an interesting place. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, in this podcast. We got a lot to talk about. But before we do that, let's get to this week's question. Because one of the things that we have seen in Rio, we've experienced next level crowds, especially at some of the tourist attractions. So our question is, where have you had the worst crowds ever? I mean, people think of Tokyo, for example, like go into the subway there and you experience really huge crowds, but it could be anywhere, especially at a tourist attraction. And with the Olympic Games coming up in Paris, I'm sure people are wondering, is it going to be crowded there? The answer is yes, almost certainly. So, worst crowds ever, question of the week. And now, on to Rio.
Well, what do you think of Rio so far?
I would say warming to Brazil a little bit, but we've done a month in São Paulo, and that was, I thought, really actually a pretty good experience overall. And but Rio is much more touristy. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you. Rio is a lot more touristy, but it's a smaller city, even though it feels denser. We were just talking with someone about that today. He told us that Rio is sort of like the big city, but it's not that big. And then Sao Paulo is like a small city, but it's actually bigger than anyone could have imagined because Rio de Janeiro used to be the capital.
It was for more than 100 years. Rio is on the Atlantic Ocean, and it's surrounded by mountains. So it's very contained. But those mountains are unlike anything that I've ever seen. They're green and they just rise right up out of the ground. There's no like slope or anything like that. It's basically just cliff. And then you have the Christ the Redeemer statue, which is the most famous, iconic landmark in Rio. And then you have all these mountains. And then you have the beaches, Ipanema, Copacabana. We're right next to Ipanema. So we get to walk along the beach when it's not too sunny, because it is always very, very sunny and very hot here.
Yeah, you want to make sure you're wearing lots of sunscreen while you're here. And you also want to make sure that you keep all your possessions in your pocket. Don't trust anyone.
Yeah. I mean, don't take your cell phone out. There is crime here. It's high security. You know, one of the interesting things is that we walked down to Ipanema, and then right where Ipanema ends, you see all these, it's heavy security, armored vehicles. And why is that?
Well, it's because here in Brazil, wherever there's a little hill, a hard to access hill, that usually becomes the favela. Becomes illegal residences and really cheap living, but also where a lot of crime and drugs are.
These are like shanty towns.
And also, Brazilian police can't really get up there, so they're essentially their own countries, too.
They're autonomous. The best they can do really is to stop them from going down to the beach and bothering the tourists.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have mixed feelings about what we've seen so far in Rio. I love the weather here. There are some foods that I really like the fruit that you get at the store is really good.
Yeah, and we've also tried, tell them about this, we tried tapioca. But tapioca is not what you're expecting.
It's not like pudding, no. They actually use it
and it's not like boba either.
Yeah, it's interesting. What are some of the things that you like about Brazil?
Well, for starters, I think Brazil, it's interesting because it's a lot like other South American countries, you know, but also when you go down the street, it feels a lot like really any other big city, whereas when you go to other cities in South America, for example, Santiago, for instance, or you go to Montevideo, you get the sense that they're trying to be Europe. You get the sense that they're trying to be Paris, for instance. And here, it doesn't feel that way. It
feels like Brazil is just trying to be itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, that's a good observation. I like that. Well, brass tacks, for me, the best thing about Rio so far is the limes. Brazilian limes are really excellent. The grapes, those uvas, they're like little purple grapes that you buy at the...
black grapes.
Amazing. Really, really good. The maracujás, passion fruit. Really, really good. They're even more tart, or is it tartar? They're tartar than they are in Sao Paulo. And those three things are enough to make me come back here because they're really, really good. But only for a very quick visit. The things that I don't like, the weather here it's very humid. It's a next level humidity.
Yeah.
You walk out in the street and your clothes are sticking to you.
Yeah.
And so I'm not really a fan of that part of it. I'm still working on the rest. So we actually went to the Christ the Redeemer statue just today, and we saw it, and it was extremely crowded. That's where we got our question of the week from, is tell us about your crazy crowd story. We went up there, and I couldn't move. That's how many people there were up there. It was crazy.
Yeah. And the crazy part is that they were bringing entire tour groups from cruises up there. And I think that that's probably irresponsible considering how many people are up there. Like when you get into the train that'll take you up to Christ the Redeemer, it's actually, you have people not just occupying every seat, but also standing.
Oh, yeah. And then one of the problems is that they're having a heat wave right now in Rio because it is late summer here. And so it's dangerously hot, even at the top of the mountain. The mountain is a little bit cooler, there's a breeze, but it still is very, very hot. So I can only imagine that people, because of all the crowds, were probably starting to faint or not feel well. And so I think that if you do go to Rio, you might want to choose to go in the off season. They have, winter, which is in June, July, and August, is a little bit cooler. So, and there's fewer tourists here. So maybe you should. That would be one takeaway. The other place that we went to was the Botanical Garden. What did you think of that, Aaron?
Well, we've been by the Botanical Garden a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Mainly to get food. They actually have some of the best Italian food just around that Botanical Garden.
Good pizzeria, yeah.
There's a good pizzeria, and there's a good bakery, too. So we've been around there. We'd never been in it until today. And wow, it's quite the garden. It's expansive, and you have some really good photo opportunities inside. I definitely would recommend it if you're into plants, and also if you're into getting a really good picture with Christ the Redeemer in the background. Yeah,
you can get a really nice picture from the fountain. In fact, I'll try to post one of those when I post this podcast. I think that it's a national treasure. I think that Botanical Garden is the place that you should go when you go to Rio. I mean, everyone's going to go to the beach, of course, and everyone's going to go see the statue. But if you can, go to see the Botanical Garden, take a walk. They have a really nice Japanese garden there. They've got a whole section devoted to Africa and African plants. And fun fact, it used to be a gunpowder factory, and then they turned it into a botanical garden. And then the gunpowder factory was turned into a kindergarten. And we had a guide who said, wouldn't it be great if that happened more often? And I said to him, it's better than the other way around.
Yeah.
For a kindergarten to be turned into a munitions factory. I'm not even going to go there. Aaron, what's the worst crowd that you've ever been in?
Honestly, everything pales in comparison to what I saw today.
Yeah, today was pretty bad.
I legitimately, I have no, I just, there's nothing that even compares. There's nothing. I actually can't think of anything.
Actually, when you were a little boy, We took you to Italy, and we went into the Sistine Chapel, and it was like a crush of people waiting in front of the chapel. And I don't think I've ever been in a crowd that's that. And it's a particular kind of crowd where people are pushing you. Everyone is pushing because they want to get somewhere. And you feel like if you fall, that they could step on you and crush you. Which is like, we were getting to that point today when we were up on the mountain. Like there was this one woman who came over and she started pushing me.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's just awful. You know what? And a destination can actually do something about that. They can implement crowd controls where they're only allowing a certain number of people up onto the hill, but they're not doing that apparently. I mean, I didn't see any evidence that they were doing that.
No.
Yeah.
It seems that they were just going to let everyone there, and that was very, how can I say, irresponsible.
Yeah, that is one way of saying it. I would say that it's all fun and games until someone gets killed. And I think that if someone gets trampled at some point in one of these at one of these attractions, then they may take that seriously. I don't know.
Yeah.
So our question of the week again is: tell me about your worst crowd experience. Whether you were in Italy looking at a famous attraction, or in the Tokyo subway. Everyone mentions the Tokyo subway. We saw crowds in the subway, but they were not as bad as they were today. So tell us about your crowd story. We'll read your comments in our next podcast. And now it's time to read your comments. In our last podcast, I asked, what country have you added to your do not visit list? And Lawrence said, I would stay away from the whole Middle East. Just seems dangerous. That seems like a lot of space there, a lot of ground to cover. Aaron, would you avoid the entire Middle East or just parts of it?
Honestly, I'd be more worried about North Africa in some cases, because this is the thing: is I've actually heard that there are some places in the Middle East that are really actually quite good. You go to Dubai, Qatar. I hear Oman is nice.
Yeah.
If you go to
Saudi Arabia, even is.
Yeah.
I mean, I have not been to Saudi Arabia, but it's on my list of places.
Yeah, and then also you have Jordan, and you also have it was Jordan, and what's the
Kuwait even?
Yeah, Kuwait.
Yeah, Kuwait.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
and those all seem like pretty reasonable places. Just stay away from like the Israel-Palestine conflict. But really, you don't need to worry about it unless you are going to the Gaza Strip. Because this is the thing, we've been to Jerusalem. There's nothing happening there. We've been to Tel Aviv, and it's nice. I really wouldn't worry about it. I don't think anyone's going to do anything to you there.
Well, that was before the recent conflict, so I don't know what it's like now. But if someone said, "Hey, you should go back to Israel," I probably would not have a problem with that. Just myself going, I don't know. DW says, I'm not sure if I'd visit Lebanon or Iran this year. I'm not sure if I would ever visit Iran. I'm not even sure if Americans are allowed to visit Iran, but I've wanted to. I hear they have beautiful mosques in Iran. But politically, it's a problematic place for Americans. So yeah, Lebanon is having a war. Good call. Donna says, we've been trying to get to Petra, and every time we start planning, something goes awry. Hope to get there someday. Ladybug says, we've been invited to visit our niece's in-laws in Giresun province, Turkey. They were recently here in the U.S. visiting, and we had a chance to meet them in person. If not for their son, we would have had a hard time communicating, but we enjoyed their company very much. While I would love to visit, I'm just a tad nervous about visiting Turkey. Aaron, should Ladybug be nervous about Turkey?
You know what? That's a good question. I actually don't think I know, because it really depends on where you're going in Turkey.
Yeah.
If you're going to visit one of the big cities and in an area that's well established, then yes. And I don't think you would find really any problems there. If you were to go to the Syrian border part, maybe you might want to worry about that.
Yeah.
But if you have family and friends, they should keep you safe. I would bet on that.
More or less, yeah. Anyway, I am so glad that you joined all of us here, and don't forget to answer our question of the week. And we will be reporting back next week from Rio, and then we're on to our next destination. Can't wait to tell you where that is. It's a big secret. See you next week.
All right, see you guys.